Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the Jason's Take On. Really excited to have you here, where we look at a variety of issues around bold customer success. Today, we're really excited to have a special guest with us, Ross Fulton, who's the CEO of Valuize. And Ross helps B2B software companies build industry-leading customer success strategy and operations. And we're really excited because Ross brings unique expertise in aligning strategy and operations and technology and data and making sure that customer success teams are really delivering the results and growing profits. Today, Ross is going to share his insights around effective customer success strategies and how to operationalize them. And I think what we've seen is a lot of organizations really struggle to develop effective strategies. And if they can get those down, then they really struggle to implement them in a way that delivers the results. So I'm really looking forward to hearing Ross's perspective on how companies can do this better. Before we introduce Ross, also here with my co-host, Jason Noble in the UK. Jason, say hello.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Really excited about this, Ross. This is as Jason said, such a key topic. And I think the kind of getting the strategy side of it for a lot of organizations, they really struggle with it. They come into customer success very reactively, tends to be very tactical, but how do you make it a business-wide strategy and look at it properly? So really excited about this.
Great, thank you. Ross, before we kick off with some questions here, can you just take a second to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, your organization, and how you came to be?
Absolutely. Thank you both again for having me join you. Love this show. So yeah, my background and how this led to my founding Valuize. I've been in B2B enterprise technology for scarily kind of 17 plus years now. In my operator days, I was fortunate enough to have roles where I was often standing in the sales acquisition side of these companies and the post-sales, what became known as customer success side of these organizations at the same time. And this wall or chasm that so commonly still today exists between that acquisition and adoption, sales, post-sales strategies, operational models, organizational models, was something that I had the opportunity to really fill and smash those walls down in my career. And that just seemed to be the right thing to do for a long time. And then as the recurring revenue models, the subscription economy started to take hold of these B2B technology companies, it became clear to me that it was an imperative, and that creating this united revenue and customer life cycle, both strategically and operationally and organizationally, to get these recurring revenue models working successfully was really a necessity. And I had the good fortune to be able to work with more than one organization that transformed its business model from perpetual licensing to subscription, evolve its technology stack into the cloud, and really be able to help them evolve the way that they drove sales as well as post-sales to support those evolutions. And it struck me that there was a very large number of companies, not just in B2B technology, but certainly where I was going to focus, B2B technology, a lot of these companies going through the similar transformation, or indeed maybe they were born in the cloud and born in the subscription economy, but they still, based on leadership that they'd hired, etc., had legacy models around how they sold and how they managed customers post-sale. So I thought, hey, I can maybe go help these organizations. And so that created Valuize. And it's been a hell of a ride so far. We've been in operation since 2017. And we're now working with the fastest growing, largest tech companies in the world on exactly this equation. And we love what we do.
That's fantastic. Great. Thank you so much.
So I love that. The background that you've got there coming from that operational part where you've seen these pains before, right, and seen firsthand, because I think that gives you quite a unique experience, doesn't it?
It does. And hey, I'm the first to admit that I was guilty. I was a proponent of some of the legacy practices for a good chunk of the first sort of phases of my career. I didn't know necessarily any better. When I was on the sales side of the organizations, I was like, yeah, let's just get the deal done. Let's get the customer across the line. I wasn't thinking about how we actually deliver measurable value to that customer once we acquired them. But again, just as with so much of life, I was fortunate, lucky, and I got an opportunity to help lead building a business unit inside one of Europe's largest technology services companies that was based on a gain share revenue model, a performance-based revenue model. And that type of revenue model was really a very sort of extreme foreshadowing of what was coming with the subscription economy. We, as a gain share based business, we only got paid if we delivered value to the customer. We paid ourselves out of that value. And so the need to acquire the right customers and take a prescriptive approach around, here's the value we're going to deliver, here's how the value is going to get delivered. We need you as the prospect to agree to this up front before we start actually delivering. Is how the business model worked. And I had no idea at the time it was going to be such a foreshadowing of how every B2B technology company today needs to structure its strategy, but it was. And it really, it was a hell of a baptism of fire, and something that just proved to be fairly relevant for 2021 and onwards.
How do you see, I mean, a lot of organizations really struggle with this and struggle developing and building their successful customer strategies. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges and even mistakes that organizations are making about this? And what else could they be doing instead? How do they change that?
I think for organizations that do have a legacy that includes an origin pre sort of subscription economy, it's I think a big win for them, and that really will help catalyze the evolution they need to go through, is really understanding this new revenue model and the unit economics within this revenue model, that subscription, consumption, let's call it recurring revenue model, just to capture all the bases. What are the unit economics of that type of recurring revenue model, and how do those unit economics map to marketing, sales, and post-sales strategies, aka customer success? I see a lot of organizations of all different sizes who have their advocates internally around, hey, we've got to be driving customer success. We need to invest in it strategically, operationally, organizationally, but they're struggling to really create the quantifiable economic business case as to why they need to do that. But the business case is always there. It's there in their unit economics around gross revenue retention, net revenue retention, how those map and now drive the valuation of these companies, the sustainable profitability of these companies, and the fact that if you can invest and do invest in customer success, you're going to see that valuation and that profitability increase because those unit economics are going to benefit. So really taking the time to understand these unit economics from bottom to top of the company, I think, is a big one, because it just removes the ambiguity. It removes the subjectivity around customer success. It's no longer just about, well, it's the right thing to do. It's almost the honorable thing to do for our customers. It changes the conversation to, no, this is the economic lifeblood of our company. And if we don't retain and expand our customers through customer success, we're going to die as a company. It's very black and white. So I think that exercise is very important. For companies that have gone through that and they've gone past the why phase in terms of the why to invest in customer success and do it properly, the next bigger mistake I see is really approaching it as just simply an organizational challenge or organizational solution, in terms of, we'll take maybe our current post-sales organizational elements, professional services support, technical account management, etc. We'll rebrand it as customer success, and we'll whack a kind of customer success vision and mission against it. And voila, we're doing customer success. And that, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. We need to be able to look at those organizational elements and empower them with the right strategy, the right operational capabilities, the right incentivization models, and integrate all that together to create a market-leading customer success strategy. Just saying, hey, we have a CS organization, and assuming that that's then going to drive the gross and net revenue retention the company needs, is, to me, candidly, bizarrely common, and something that, yeah, we as Valuize sort of pour them back down our framework and say, yes, organizational is important and the branding of it, etc., but we've got to fuel that organization with these other elements as well.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I've seen many organizations where they just change the label, change the name, try to keep the existing staff, and really don't do a whole lot different other than now they've just marketed it. And if it's a marketing and a branding effort for customer success, as opposed to what are you going to do that's different, that will have a different impact on the result, you're not going to get very far. And it's pretty disappointing. So Ross, that leads to another question too, which is, if you believe organizations need to have that holistic view that you talked about and really put the right things in place in their processes, how do you take that holistic view in developing customer strategies, and how should companies be aligning and integrating their customer strategy across marketing, sales, and post-sales? How do you bring it all together in the right way? And I guess related to that, if you had to pick just one action that would be most critical for achieving success here, what would it be?
Yeah, I think the key to creating that holistic, integrated strategy, organizational approach, operational approach to this is to take the outward to inward looking approach, which is actually park the internal dynamics around who's doing what, et cetera, and just begin with the customer in the context of we need to be able to drive retention and expansion of revenue from those customers. Let's all agree that to do that, we need to be able to enable that customer to realize measurable value from their adoption of our products and services. And this concept of driving measurable value realization via our customers' adoption of our products and services, that is a universal concept that marketing, sales, and every other post-sales function can get behind, I believe, and should be able to get behind. It creates a common dialect, it creates a common mission, and the science that goes into enabling customers to realize measurable value from their adoption of your products and services. It spans marketing, it spans sales in a net new acquisition context, and it spans all the post-sale elements of the journey as well around customer success. And this is a challenge with the term customer success as well. Do you mean professional services as well? But for the sake of argument in this conversation, when I say CS, I'm including every aspect of the post-sales journey. So this science and this concept around, it's all about creating measurable value for our customers, because that is the way that we drive then the internal goals around retention and expansion of these customers. That's where we have to begin. And we have a framework in Valuize that we prescribe to our clients, and at the foundation of it is this concept of we must define outcomes that represent that measurable value that customers can achieve through their adoption of our products. And every other element of the framework is driven from that foundation. The sales playbooks and roles, the post-sales playbooks and roles, how we're leveraging customer data, how we're operationalizing these strategies through technology, it's all rooted in that foundation. So it just takes out the political, the cultural, the economic sort of variables and almost subjective arguments internally when you just say, it's just about the customer. It's about prescribing and delivering measurable value. That to me is the key of creating that holistic, integrated approach. It's something we've applied many times as Valuize, and we've seen its transformative impact many times over. My final point on it, what it sounds, well, that sounds easy. Why wouldn't everyone just do that? The challenge with it, that again, we're very acutely focused on in Valuize to make sure our clients get past this, is that there's a huge degree of vulnerability around the subject of, are we enabling, are our customers realizing measurable value from our products, especially in an organization, in a software solution or any type of solution provider that's been around for a number of years, has got hundreds if not thousands of customers using products, to now, whatever it might be, 5, 10, 15, 25 years later, say, hang on a minute, do we know if our customers are realizing measurable value from our products? Can we define that value? Can we measure that? Can we quantify it? It's a fairly vulnerable question to ask, because it's obviously, of course we can, but well, can we? And it requires that top-down vulnerability to say, we're not saying we don't know, and we're not saying it's not happening, but let's just validate that we do have that value defined in the form of outcomes that we can prescribe, we can deliver, we can measure, and let's swallow our egos, as whether it be product leaders, sales leaders, post-sales leaders, and just ask the hard question. That's the chasm to cross in this journey that we find a lot of organizations get stuck at. And I could talk about that at length and experiences I've seen there, but it is where you have to start, in my opinion.
How do you, once you've got through that start and you've got the strategy, how do you then get people to, and I've seen this with other businesses, you can come up with the strategy, the vision, but how do you then operationalize it? How do you then filter it down the rest of the business? You've talked a little bit about it then, intimated some of the steps, but could you share a bit more insight for our listeners as to what do you see organizations need to do to how they go from strategy to actually making this work?
Yeah, absolutely. So we agree that the strategy, the foundation of it, is the definition of these outcomes. From these outcomes, we can then say, okay, what do we as the vendor, the solution provider, and what does the customer themselves need to do in terms of tasks and activities to progress themselves through this journey to achieve each outcome and to be able to measure the value of it. And so it's that definition of activities and tasks and the associated role definitions that form the playbooks, the processes that become the more sort of detailed elements of the strategy. With those starting to come to life, we can then start to think about data and we have to think about data. And we start to ask the question, what data do we need to trigger the right action at the right time with the right customer, with the right person in that customer, per the design of the playbooks, to make sure, again, that we're driving this journey forward? And what data do we need to capture off the back of each action we execute or the customer executes to tell us whether that action was successful and was it as efficient as possible? And so when you talk about customer-led actions, we're starting to get into product telemetry data, product usage data. Is the customer doing the right things in the product per the formula that we prescribe them to say, hey, if that user can do these jobs in the product by using the product in these ways, and we can track that, we know they're moving towards achieving this outcome. That combination of playbooks, processes, role definitions, and data foundation is what we then operationalize through technology. And so the technology side of this equation around CS technology, or whatever the technology might be, that's the very sharp, pointy end of this framework and of this motion. It's where the rubber hits the road. It's where the business impact and the efficiency and the scalability of the strategy is achieved. But it needs to be fueled by the strategy and by the data. And so another common, I think, mistake we see organizations make is, let's say that they do the organizational definition and they don't just do a rebranding. They'll then jump straight to saying, hey, well, let's go buy some technology, or let's pack it out in our current CRM, and expect that to give us all singing or dancing customer success strategy. And it just doesn't work like that. This technology out there is designed to operationalize your data and your strategy. It's not there to give you your strategy. So viewing it as, yes, it is an imperative part of this process in terms of the technology, but it's not a silver bullet. You've got to fuel it with the strategy, is another very strong recommendation we make to our clients.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of things there too, and I like one of the things you said early on about taking the ego and the personality out of the equation, the politics and all that stuff. And at some point, when you go to operationalize, I find a lot of times that it ekes back in trying to figure out how you deal with that. And also, I'm curious because you mentioned the silver bullet of technology, because I think we see that quite a bit, where they have technology is going to solve it, and if we have this, it's going to make a lot of that other stuff go away, and won't we be great? But what do you say to a customer who has these false expectations about their technology or the strategy, or about even some of the ego and personality issues that are inevitably going to come in? How do you recommend organizations that approach those issues?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about the organizational aspects, ego, culture, politics, it is I certainly subscribe to the whole culture eats strategy for breakfast theory, and that culture ultimately is a top-down driven concept, at least in enterprises, and we specialize in Valuize in late stage to public enterprise companies. It's top down, and so one of the very positive, healthy evolutions that I've seen in types of companies we specialize in terms of B2B software is the evolution of the CRO or the Chief Customer Officer role, where you've got this one single accountable owner for not just acquiring net new revenue, driving the retention and expansion of revenue from customers, and that owner recognizing that's achieved by having this holistic customer success strategy. I think that is transforming the culture, or is at least a key catalyst to transforming the culture in a lot of companies we see and we work with, and is going back to that wall I was describing that still today many organizations stand between sales and post-sales. The emergence of that role is starting to disintegrate that wall in a lot of organizations. So I think that's a very positive one. Tactically, just quickly on the organizational side of the equation, incentivization models are often somewhat overlooked in terms of being a key part of this equation around ensuring that there is aligned incentivization across the customer lifecycle to drive the right behaviors in the organization. And if you take sales, and if you have a hunter sales organization that's just purely focused on net new, if they're not incentivized to care about whether the customer they acquire is then successful and can be retained and expand, you can't really blame the poor souls for acting the way that they do. And so let's incentivize them accordingly. And whether you want to do that through carrot and stick is a whole other conversation, but let's make sure that there's some consideration and incentivization for them to say, yeah, let's make sure we acquire the right customer. Let's make sure we acquire a customer we can make successful, because either I'm incentivized or I'm arguably potentially penalized if we don't retain that customer, let's say after the first year. So incentivization, and the same goes with post-sales in terms of, if I want my CS organization to drive expansion, if they're not incentivized to do that, then yeah, we're giving ourselves a bit of an uphill battle. On the technology front, I think the category of CS technology is still relatively young, certainly compared to MarTech and sales tech and CRM. And I think partially for that reason, we see still a lot of organizations that look at customer success technology as being a bolt-on, a plug-in, just something that you stick in the side of the CRM or whatever you might be using. Whereas in fact, CS technology as a category, and there's platforms out there that warrant this definition, it is enterprise grade, mission critical software that runs your business. And so the operating model, the administration model, the development model that you see in organizations wrap around the likes of their CRM, around Salesforce, that's required for CS technology as well, for you to be able to get the optimum value, scale, and efficiency out of that software. It's not something you can just have someone run off the side of their desk as a CSM. It's something that is mission critical software, so treat it accordingly. But again, we see a lot of organizations who we don't quite understand what this CS technology does. We don't quite understand the value of it. So we're certainly loath to build an operating model around it. And we're probably loath to really even hire a full-time administrator for it. But it's what the software requires.
I was going to say, Ross, that point there is so key. And I've seen so many times where you almost bring in the tool, the technology, but in its own right, it creates a silo and a new silo. And it's how you then get everybody to buy in. Guys, this is actually a critical piece of enterprise technology for our business and for our customers. I need you to use it.
Absolutely.
I've seen that multiple times, and it is a big challenge that you have. I know a lot of these organizations, you're not just purchasing the software or subscribing to the software and the new models, but you've also got to look after, like you said, your point, an admin. You need someone full-time, pretty much full-time, to administer these applications, and that's another cost that you didn't think about.
Yeah, and I think to that point too, so many so many B2B organizations still don't fully understand CS, and CS people struggle to get a budget for even staff members or little things, to think that they're going to get the same amount of budget that Salesforce would, or things like that. I think it's a tough lift right now, but hopefully that'll be changing over the next few years. I suspect it will be.
Oh, I think it will. I think there's a collision course happening here where the CS technology as a category of technology, its capabilities, the value it can create, the significance it's starting to take inside organizations. To me, there's not a sustainable existence between that and the CRM category.
Yep.
And in, I don't know what the time frame is, 3 to 5 years, there's going to be a collision course here, and we're going to end up with one. And whether, who knows, I don't really care what it's going to be called, but it's going to be a single platform or single category of technology that provides the system of record capabilities that a CRM provides today around customer data, but the system of insight and system of action capabilities that CS Tech provides that CRMs don't provide around digital journeys, success planning, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think this is not going to be a dichotomy that's going to exist forever, but it is one today which is arguably horribly inefficient.
I think that's spot on. And it really, you look as to where CRMs come from, and it's been around for as long as it has, 20 plus years. Everybody understands it a lot better. But when you talk about customer success management technology, it's very poorly understood. And I think you're so right that we will, particularly as CS professionals and leaders, continue. We want a CS tool. At some point, it is going to come together.
Yeah.
How do you see the data side of this? So you've got with your CS Tech, with your CRM, you've got customer data, and you can effectively capture it. But capturing it is only one part of it. If you're capturing it well, how do you then use that data and get value from that data, do the analysis on that to actually give you actionable insights? What are the key steps that you see some of your customers and organizations having to take for this, to use the data more effectively and to ask the right questions about it?
Yeah, very great question, very important subject. And yeah, so I think going back to the first part of your statement, if they're capturing it correctly and clean, huge if and rare, but it is improving.
A big assumption.
Yeah, if they have the golden record of a customer and it's clean, it's got a unique identifier, all that fun stuff, and then we can wrap that around with other key insights around the telemetry usage I mentioned earlier, voice of the customer data, and many other different data inputs. How do we then leverage that? Goes back to the strategy design, in terms of the strategy should drive and be leading the definition of the questions we should be asking of that customer data. And we again break down the definition and the concepts of strategy is made up of the definition of the outcomes that create measurable value for our customers, and then the processes, playbooks, roles, etc., workflows that we've designed that we know if followed enable those outcomes to be achieved. That's what we're defining as strategy. Those processes, playbooks, we can extract from those the leading and lagging indicators that tell us whether those processes and playbooks are being followed successfully, are creating the results that we want, are being followed efficiently. Those questions then become the questions we need to ask of our customer data foundation and start to drive the definition of KPIs and metrics and health score logic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, we certainly see a lot of organizations. Earlier in my career, I spent a lot of time in the business intelligence as it started to emerge in the mid 2000s out of the murky ERP reporting world. And the whole concept there around, you've got to be asking the right questions of the data, and then you've got to have a plan to take action on the answers to those questions. That's a never-ending concept that's valid for everything, and as valid for customer data in terms of, we've got a customer data foundation. If it's accurate and as clean as it can be, let's define the questions we should ask of the data based on the strategy. And then the strategy will also tell us what actions we should take off the back of the data. So we go, it's a bit of a vicious circle in some companies. Well, we don't have the strategy. And I was like, well, you have to build the strategy to know how to get value out of the data foundation. And about the concept of customer data, because you've got the sales forces and the system of record concepts, often there's a lot of organizations who are spending a lot of energy, a lot of investment around customer data. But to your point, Jason, they don't know what to do with the data once they have it. And that's because they've underinvested in the actual design of the strategy. So we keep pulling them back down to this concept of the strategy design, but it's got to be a bi-directional design flow, in that there's no point designing a strategy, a set of playbooks that can't actually be operational because the data doesn't exist. We've got to know what data does exist, how healthy is it, how clean is it, how can we leverage it during the strategy design. So it's a bit of a sort of bi-directional flow, in the same way that technology fits into this equation as well. You can't design the strategy in isolation of the technology. You've got to ensure that you've got expertise on the technology infusing the design of your strategy, because why wouldn't you design strategy that takes full advantage of the technology capabilities? And also, let's avoid designing a strategy that is expecting the technology to be able to do something that it can't. We see that isolation of someone over here is doing strategy, someone over here is doing data, someone over here is thinking about the technology, but they're not connected at all. And what does it net out in? Zero improvement and zero business impact, because none of it's connected together.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I've seen that in a lot of projects, like with CRM in particular, where it's designed in a vacuum and a lot of silos, and the net result is very underwhelming all the way through. Well, Ross, thank you so much for sharing your insights, and the time has gone by quickly. But before we go, we're all about bold customer success on our podcast, and we like to present a bold challenge question for our listeners, really, and have you as a guest share some of your actionable ideas. So let me ask you, what is the single most important bold action you would like to see companies take to develop and implement more effective customer strategies? Really outside the box, bold, aggressive.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's bringing the right members of every single, I honestly believe every single part of the organization, product, engineering, sales, customer success, but bring in finance, bring in human capital management, etc., and have this conversation around, can we articulate the measurable value that our products create for our customers? Mm-hmm. And by that articulation in the form of an outcome or outcomes that we can link a value equation to a value calculation to say, hey, if customer has current state A, they can achieve future state B, and that creates this measurable value. Have that conversation, because I can guarantee you're going to have lots of voices in the room that can talk about your value proposition. Mm-hmm. That is distinct from the measurable outcomes that you can map directly to a customer adopting your product. Value-based outcomes are below, it's the level of detail below the value proposition. Just get in the room and have that conversation. And there should be no pressure, no expectation around whether there's no wrong or right answer at this stage. And there's no guns to the head around, you better know this answer, otherwise there's going to be trouble. Just have the conversation, because I think it will be very enlightening, and making sure you have it across the organization. It just creates a unity around, if you maybe don't have the answers or not the answers to the extent that you think you should have the answers, you can have a cross-organizational ownership of that fact. And that provides you the foundation then to flow into cross-organizational unified strategies, operational models, etc., that we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us and joining us and sharing your ideas, Ross. Before we go, I want to invite you to do a shameless plug for Valuize and tell people a little bit more about what you guys do and who you help.
Sure, no, absolutely. I'll be shot by my marketing team if I don't do that. So yeah, we're Valuize, valuize.co.co, and yeah, we're a consulting company. We provide this end-to-end capability around customer success strategy, operations, data, and technology to the fastest growing and largest tech companies in the world to help them ultimately maximize their net revenue retention as an organization. We love what we do, and if you'd like to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn, please do so, and or connect with any other member of our team via our social media, please do. We love this subject, we love talking about it. If anyone would ever like to have a chat about this stuff, then please reach out.
Fantastic. And we'll have links to your LinkedIn profile and to your company in the show description below. So thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate the conversation.
Such a cool conversation, Ross. Really big thank you for that. Really interesting stuff. Really excited about watching what you guys do.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Jason. It's love your work.
Thank you.